Welcome to the Rural Blueprint. I'm Hannah. This is a podcast about the innovative spirit showing up in rural communities across the Pacific Northwest and beyond. The small business owners, community partners, and organizers who are strengthening their towns. Each episode, we go deep on their journeys, the strategies that are actually working, and what we can all learn from the people who've decided to invest in rural places. If you care about where those communities are headed, you're in the right place. Let's get to it. I'm so excited to chat with you, Allison. My guest today solves a rural business problem that a lot of rural entrepreneurs struggle with. If your business model relies in any way on not just word of mouth, which, spoiler, it might be the majority of rural businesses, they need some kind of outward communication to find out about what you do and that you're even in the area. Allison solves that problem. So she has a background in journalism. She has more than a decade helping small business owners and figures figure out how to show up online in ways that actually work for them. Today, we're focusing on covering what makes a website actually function for a rural business. So let's say I run a small business in Burns, Heppner, or Astoria. I've got a Facebook page and people know me locally. Why do I actually need to invest in a real website if I'm looking to grow in that area?
Yeah, great question. I think having a social media presence is something that I always encourage people to have. And so what I'm going to say after this is not to discourage you to have something like a Facebook page, but it's to think about what that page, that profile, what it's actually doing for you. So there's 4 concerns that I would bring to top of mind if you are thinking, everybody around here knows me. Almost all of them are connected to my Facebook page, which could be true if your town is 900 people and you've done a great job connecting with chambers and other organizations. You may have a huge following when it comes to your area, but there's a couple of things to think about. One, Facebook is a closed environment. It means that unless you have a profile on Facebook, none of the content on Facebook is available to you. So right out of the gate, the only people that you're talking to with a Facebook page are people that have Facebook. I also think it's important to think about who your target audience is, because a lot of times when we live in small towns, and just for context, I live in Philomath on the outskirts of Corvallis. That's where I'm actually sitting right now. And so we've got about 3,500 people here. We definitely know people when they're walking down the street. It's like, oh, I know them, or I know somebody connected to their family. And so it can feel like you're connected to a lot of people and have a lot of support in a small town. But it's also important to think about who is actually your target audience. People love supporting people in their hometowns, people they know, people they've watched grow, but they may just be kind of connected with you and supporting you because they know you. So Facebook, in your example, that's an aging crowd. The crowd on Facebook largely is 45 and over. So the first thing that I would also consider when you think about who I'm selling to on Facebook is how old are those people? If what I just said resonates with your audience, great. If your audience is younger than that, then definitely think about other pivots to other platforms. And another thing to think about, especially if you have a business profile, which of course looks good on Facebook because you have yourself polished and together, you've got a business profile. As soon as you switch to business, Facebook says, excellent, now we're ready for you to pay to be able to extend your reach. So organically is the word that we would use in promoting yourself on social without money. As soon as you convert into a business profile, it is designed to suppress the algorithm to get you to boost or pay for posts. That is a fact. So you are going to see your engagement go down. And there's a lot of things you can do. Again, don't want to discourage, but be aware that that is the case. In fact, only 10% of the people that follow you on your Facebook page will even see a post without you paying for that number to be larger. And so making sure that you're focusing on the people that are following you and giving them the content that they want to see is really important, but also to realize just because you said it once doesn't mean that even the majority of the people who follow you saw it, and certainly the people outside of your network most likely didn't see it unless you're dealing with like a viral post situation. Those would be a couple of things that I would consider with your Facebook page. Again, keep it, stay engaged with that audience, but start thinking about what else can you do to get out of that closed platform that doesn't require you to pay them in order to show you to people.
Facebook is a business. They want to have your money. That's a great point. Yeah, I think that leads great into my next question, which is about the mistakes that rural business owners make. So, what are the biggest mistakes that you have seen rural business owners make when they finally build a website? What's the biggest mistake that you've seen people make?
I know just personally, when I started my business, the website was something that I spent a lot of time thinking about. What is it that I wanted to show other people? Because really, when you think about what your website is it's a digital handshake. It sets the tone of who you are. It conveys messaging. It makes people feel a particular way. It does things for you or should be doing things for you. But a lot of times when we have people that come to us who say, okay, I've been in business for X amount of time and I realize that my website is a mess or my website doesn't represent me, or just frankly, I threw it together one night because everybody told me I needed to have a website when I started my business. And like you said earlier, we're all excited to run our business and do the thing that's in our business. We're not necessarily wanting to do all the tasky things. So if a website has nothing to do with your business, it could be very low on your priority list. But the fact of the matter is, it's really high on the priority list of people who are going to be shopping for you and for the bots that are going to find you on the internet. And I'll go a little bit into that without getting too weedy. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that people just think, I'm going to slap something together. It's going to be there. And then later on, they realize they need to spend more time, more money, have a couple more headaches because they didn't really think about the intention behind the website. I
Mm.
think really one of the biggest things that we run into is all of us can probably agree that we want a website that's really clear, easy to look at. It's not cluttered with a bunch of words. Like, in fact, one thing I hear the most is I'd really like to say the most with the least amount of words, which is a great goal for humans. But the thing that we forget is that we don't build websites just for humans. We build websites for humans and then for the bots that crawl the internet, the ones that are scanning Google, reading website pages and understanding when somebody just made a search asking for something near them, which a lot of us do, right? Whatever it is, whether it's food, whether it's gardening tools, whether it's clothes, whether it's a service near me. So it's scanning the internet and it's looking for these things. Bots have to have content. They have to have words and able to understand what your website is about. So if we think about what I just said, when people are like, I really just want the least amount of words as possible. Yes. But also, if you don't have 300 words on every page of your website, bots deem that page completely invaluable, meaning they're not even going to read it. They're not going to scan it. They're not going to show you in results. It has zero value in the search engine if you don't say enough. So then the balance is, how do I get my message across to the humans without losing their attention and boring them with a bunch of things that they maybe don't need to know? But how do I also pair that same thing into making sure that bots have what it is that they need to find? There's a lot of
Mm.
technical stuff. Really, the biggest thing that I would say when you think about your website for your business, what are the things that either you know are your top sellers, whether we're talking about products, whether we're talking about services, or the things you assume will be your top sellers if you haven't yet started your business? All of those things should have their own page on your website. A lot of times I'll come across a page and it's a one scroll website. There's a bulleted list of these are all the services that we offer, whether it's 3 or whether it's 12. And
Mm.
again, as a human, I could pick up the phone and call and ask you for more. A lot of humans won't do that in itself. Some people will. But those services, if you want them to have the attention in the search engine that is needed to actually find your website and then deliver it to humans, all of those things should have their own page. But if you're just starting out and you're not worried about SEO and getting a marketing team and having a bunch of people helping you, at least build a page for each of the things that you want to sell the most of to get yourself started and positioned in the search engine to be found in the first place. Because really, none of your messaging matters if a human never gets delivered your website because bots deem it invaluable.
And that's a great point. I think you also made a great point about something that I always think about in marketing communication, which is that ambiguity is the bane of all communication. Okay, I'm building this website. What is it for? What purpose is it serving? And what information needs to be on there? Not all rural businesses, a lot of them are based in the people around them, but some of them are trying to expand to other areas, or they want to ship outside of the area completely.
Mm.
Even if you just want to expand from this town to the next 3 towns over, I want a bigger radius. All this information still applies to you. For someone selling something, let's say they sell handmade jewelry or furniture, or they provide a service, or they run a feed store or local produce company. So clear messaging, if I'm selling those things, what does it mean? How do I have a clear message if I
Mhm.
do those things?
Two things come to mind. I would say one of the first things that you can do is think about all of the questions that people ask you about your business or about your product or about how you do things or why you do things. When I think about creating content for my website and even for clients, I think about the questions that I have about what they do that they haven't yet answered for me. We know what those are as business owners when we're out in the community and we're talking to people and people are like, so how is it that you do this? Or you know what those questions are. The answering those questions is a great way to beef up content on your website because you know people are already thinking them. I always think when one person asks me a question, at least 10 other people had the same question. It's just that one person asked me and those other ones didn't. So I
Mm.
would definitely think about that in general when it comes to clear messaging. But one of the things that I also, my background is in journalism, and so one of the things that I learned in my journalism training, I translate into my work today. And that was that when we would write news articles, we were told to write them at a level that a high schooler would interact with. And that is not a dig at high schoolers at all. They're very smart individuals. It has nothing to do with smarts. What it has to do is experience. We are the experts in our business. We know our business better than anyone else. We should, at least. And so what we start to understand about our business becomes common sense. And then our explaining it to people, we start to use jargon or we start to use shorthand in our writing. And we just assume that everybody else knows it as well as we do because we're in it. We live it. We breathe it. It is our business. To us, it's like, duh, when we say something, and to other people, they're like, what? So when you think about the context of writing for a high schooler, it's because they haven't had the experience to put together all the pieces. So you really have to say it in a way that answers the questions that you think are obvious, that are definitely not obvious to other people when they're not working in your business. And so I take that approach when I'm writing a website, when people start using, when I'm interviewing them to create content for their website, for example, and they start using words that I know are not words. If I was making a Google search looking for that person's product or service, I wouldn't use that word. What does that even mean? So can you tell me what that means in a way that literally someone who didn't know they needed you would be stumbling across you in Google because they used a word to describe your service. And all of a sudden they start thinking, oh, okay, they're outside of their expert mind and they're thinking about what the people who are actually looking for the service would call it. There is definitely a difference in those two things. So as far as clear messaging, think from that perspective. If I was not in my business, what would I want to know and how would I say it? That's how you approach the messaging for your website. Also, when you're creating website content, you're not creating it for yourself. Like you really should not be talking about you at all. It should be about how you're helping solve someone's problem, how you fit into their life, how they can picture themselves using your product or your service. Really, the only place you should be talking about you is on the about page. If somebody wants to know, well, who is this Allison and why should I trust her? That's what an about page is for. Every
Mm.
other page, especially your homepage, it's a big pet peeve for mine. You really shouldn't be talking about yourself at all on your homepage. Most people's traffic on their website, most people land on a homepage. And if that homepage doesn't speak immediately to the person, their problem and your solution, they're not going to go to any other page on your website. So you really have to
Yeah.
think about like, why am I talking to this person, and forget about yourself in that answer.
Totally. Yeah.
Yep.
The next question was about SEO, which
Mm.
is where my mind starts to get really confused personally
Mhm.
because I haven't invested time to learn about SEO. What does it mean to have good SEO and what should we be thinking about it and what actions do we need to take?
SEO means search engine optimization. That in itself is something people don't even understand. They'll come through and they'll be like, I need to know about this SEO, but I don't even know what that acronym stands for. What that means quite literally is creating a relationship with the search engine. You're manipulating the algorithm to be able to understand who you are, what you do, and why you should be connected to particular search results. The act of doing it becomes very technical, and I won't bore you with all that stuff. There's a lot of things on the back end that need to be done on the back end of your website that need to be done to be able to help make that connection. But really at the core of it, what SEO is it's a long-term strategy to understand how Google and Bing and other search engines, but Google is the big one worldwide. 90% of all searches are made worldwide in Google. So if there's one search engine that you're going to become besties with, it should definitely be Google. So I will just use that in my example. But creating that relationship means that you have to make sure Google can find you, remember who you are, and serve you up in searches when things come up that are relevant to your business. And so that is what the act of SEO is. Now, the biggest thing that you can control as a business owner, we kind of already touched on, which is the pages that you have dedicated for your most important topics. I said that not only for humans, but also for bots. They need to be able to just figure out one page of content. If you actually talk about 5 services on one page, bots literally will be like, I don't know what the focus is here. I'm going to bounce over to another website where somebody did what is recommended, which is one topic per page. And then I already mentioned 300 words at least about that one thing. And I'm talking at least, like, depending on how busy your industry is with websites. Let's say, for example, if you're a lawyer, lawyers have a lot of competition in search engines. So we're actually putting 2,000 words on a service page for a lawyer. If you have something that's a little more niche, maybe you're a candle maker, we can probably get away with 500 words because you don't have as much competition. So when you meet with a specialist for SEO, they're going to think about a whole bunch of things that you don't need to worry about, but know that their questions are trying to get at what do we need to do to stimulate and manipulate the algorithm to find you and serve you up. Because in reality, the people that are at the top of search results, I mean, I think that we can all agree that we probably don't remember the last time that we went to page 2 in results of a Google search when we were looking for something. So people that aren't even on the first page, which shows the first 10 results that bots found most relevant for a search. If you're not in the top, like let's say the top 3, get about 30% of the clicks. The one in position 10 on the first page gets about 1% of the clicks. So the difference between showing up at the top and showing up at the bottom is huge. It could actually mean making or breaking a sale. So it is something that you want to be aware of. And there's a lot of different factors that go into it, like I said, but just at the core of it, think about the messaging that is most important to start with. And SEO specialists can work with all of your messaging to do all the things that they need to do on the back end of the website.
That's so helpful. I feel like this is one of the things that I would totally hire out to do and not spend time doing it. There's a lot of skills that are fun to spend time developing, and for me, this is not one of them. But if it is, I hope I don't know why they'd be listening to this podcast. They probably already know how to do it. That's so helpful. I think my next question was about if someone has had a website, it's been sitting there for 3 years and they've never thought about it. What's the first thing they could check to gauge like a health of how bad is it? How good is it?
Yeah, well, first thing, good news is if your website is 3 years old, that's better than it being brand new. One of the factors of SEO, and again, there are so many of them, but one of the more basic factors is how old is your domain? The URL, the www dot that you bought, how long have you owned that? The longer, the better. So the reality is we live in a world where scammers are a real thing, and they build brands literally overnight to look and feel exactly like you want them to. So when they call you the next morning, the scam begins. So the reason why search engines respond to URLs that are older versus younger is because you haven't been shut down yet. You're probably legitimate. That's one thing. And that's something that we talk about with people when we're building their website for the first time. And then they say, you know what? I didn't come up in a search result. You got to give it some time, at least 6 months. Again, you're building a relationship. Even if you're not investing in SEO services, just pushing launch on a website doesn't mean that Google knows you exist yet. It takes time for those bots to be crawling, for people to be searching things, for it to find you and for it to remember you. So it's all about this relationship that you're having with these things that don't really exist tangibly. So the age of your domain would definitely be important. But if it's just been sitting there in your example for 3 years and you haven't done anything, that's problematic for an SEO perspective. And one of the other things that bots will consider when they're looking at websites is, how often is this content changing? Are these the same words that I've been scanning for 3 years? Are these the same pictures that they've been using? Are there no new videos? Anything different about this website? And if nothing is different, it signals that relevance could be questionable if you're not making changes. And I think a lot of us, as we get in our businesses and have the capacity to really start thinking about what our digital assets look like, our websites do evolve with us and with our business, and they should. My business isn't the same as it was 5 years ago, and it won't be the same as it is today 5 years from now. But you got to make sure your website comes with you, because that's a digital signal about your relevance for bots. So having the website just sitting there might do something for the human that stumbles across it, but the bots aren't going to be handing it out to anybody who's not just stumbling around. One thing that I would recommend, if you don't have it already on your website, is start a blog. And the reason why the blog is important for, obviously for the content that you're creating, it is important for people to find it and have it available. But I'm going to bring up the bots again. Your blog being published, whether you do it once a month or once a week or maybe even a quarter, probably want to do it a little bit more, but doing it a couple times versus none is better. The point of a blog a lot of times involves SEO. And that is that you're always talking about new topics, whether they're tips about gardening in the spring or how to prepare your HVAC for the winter or for the summer. These things are adding valuable keywords attached to your website that are now launched into the Google sphere, and people are going to find them because they're new. Remember, bots really like new stuff. So you might not be changing the content on your homepage. Maybe you're swapping out some photos because that feels easier to do, and that's great. But the blog maybe is helping fill all those gaps of like not wanting to reformat all of your traditional content on your pages and just creating new seasonal things that can be topical for a blog.
Yeah. If you could get every rural entrepreneur to understand one thing about their website, what do you want them to know? If they take one thing from this, what should it be?
Your website isn't just something that exists somewhere to say that I have a website. Your website should be generating leads for you when you sleep. It's really as simple as that. If you don't have people coming to you and saying, I found you on Google, I found you in a search, I came across your website and I loved the way that you spoke to me about my solution. If you aren't hearing those things, I hope you're asking people first how they found out about you when they come into your company. And a lot of us small business owners do take in all of our clients personally. And so being able to ask that question and really listening is extremely important. But I guess the takeaway here would be, don't just have a website, have a website that works for you.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think you've given a lot of very clear steps to just begin to invest in this asset. When I got to my area, I said, marketing agency near me, that's the first person that popped up was you. And the reason that I'm talking with you now is probably because of that. So with that being said, you offer website audits. What does that involve and how can we reach out to you if we want that service to work with you?
So if you have a website and you know something's wrong with it, most of us know in our gut when our website is not doing what it should do for us. But you don't know where to start because it's not your jam, and that's okay. So you come to us and you say, I want a website audit. So what that looks like is us looking at every page of your website, like literally scanning all the pages, pushing every button, things that are blaring SEO issues. We will point those out as well. Sometimes it's simple as how you've positioned the URL for a particular page. It's things you would never even consider. So we're going to look at all those things. We're going to give you a comprehensive report of, sometimes it's a 10-page report about all the things we found and how to fix them. Because one of the things I also realized is that some people are more savvy than others with their website, and they might be able to fix 70% of the things in their audit on their own without a developer. So whether you want to do the fixes on your own, have us do them entirely, or somewhere in between, that's up to you. But the website audit at least gives you a place to start from our point of view, what you can do better in search engines and in your communications in general.
Perfect. I am so grateful for all of your expertise. If you want to reach out to Allison, your team's website is lamplightcreatives.com. Thank you so much, Allison, for your time, your expertise. You spent so much time creating perfect, actionable answers for our audience, and we all really appreciate it. I know everybody who reads this is going to appreciate it.
Yeah, and I do want to invite, for anybody that goes to the website, there's two things. There's a resource page. You can definitely go on there and download free resources. We create them a lot of times based off of common questions, common problems that people encounter that we can answer with something you can download. And that can include worksheets, checklists. We have a whole bunch of stuff. Check it out. We add new stuff there. Also, sign up for our newsletter. I send out tips a couple times a month. I try to do it every week, and really stuff that you can use. Like anything we talked about here today could be game for something that pops up in that little tidbit that I'm going to send out.
Thank you for mentioning that. That's wonderful. Thanks for listening to the Rural Blueprint. If this conversation was useful, share it with someone who needs it. You can find resources for rural entrepreneurs and their communities, including funding opportunities and business development programs, and more at reinventingrural.com. We'll see you next time.